Chapter 2. Family Tree. My dad ran off when I was in kindergarten and my mom went after him. My grandmother raised me until this past summer. That's when Mom finally stopped trying to get my dad turned around and remembered about me. One morning, she rang the doorbell. "Who's there?" I yelled. And when Grandma and I yanked the door open, a stranger was standing on the front porch, like one of those church ladies dressed in shiny shoes and a Sunday hat. I'm sorry I've been gone so long," she said. "I'm sorry you're back," Grandma snapped, and shoved me out of the way with her elbow, which nearly jammed my Tootsie Pop down my throat. I just want to smooth things out," said the lady, who was my mom. "I've heard all that before," Grandma shouted, and shoved me back again because I kept sticking my head around her hips so I could see what was going on. I really wasn't sure if either of them was talking about because I didn't recognize that lady. Then she pushed the door open and took one giant step right into the living room before anyone told her she could. "Hi, Joy," she said. "I'm your mom." When she reached out and tried to touch my head, I ducked away and I said I wasn't sure if she was my mom because I don't even remember what she looked like. She got an awful pain across her face and I figured she must be my mom because no stranger would have been so hurt by what I said. But she didn't crumble. Instead, she started walking all through the rooms, just shaking her head at the way Grandma and I kept things. "Now that I'm back," she said, "things are going to change around here. No more living in the pig pen." Then right away, she started making up new rules and trying to take control of me and Grandma and the house. I didn't like her at all. And during those first few weeks she was back, we all fought pretty good. I was a wired-up mess by the time Mom came back to live with me and Grandma. By then, everyone thought Grandma was a nutty old lady responsible for my bad behavior. But I am how I am because Grandma was born wired, and my dad, Carter Pigza, he was born wired, and I followed right behind him. It's as if our family tree looked like a set of high-voltage wires strung across a field from one steel tower to the next. Grandma all the time said I was just like my dad, bouncing off the walls 24 hours a day. But he hasn't yet bounced in our direction, so I guess he's still bouncing out there somewhere else. Grandma said he bounced over to Pittsburgh, but someday he might spring back and just bounce right through our front door. I wish he would. I wish he was, because I only just hear about him now. And I'd like to see for myself what he's like. I have one of those wind-up cars with the twisty wheels, and when it bumps into things, changes directions, and then bump into something else, and over and over. And when I play with it, I always think about my dad as steering. Eyes spinning in the back of his head, his foot all the way down on the gas. My toy car gets drained and stops. But I guess he never winds down. He just keeps smashing into buildings and signs and parked cars. I figure we got a lot in common because once when Grandma was in a sudden good mood, she said to me as a helpful warning, "Joy, I want you to pull your act together. You don't want to turn out like your father, do you?" "Can I get back to you on that?" I yelled, and I tried to run off. "Listen to me," she said, grabbing me as I ran by. "Your dad's such a nervous wreck you couldn't stand still long enough to line up for free medicine down at the clinic." Then Grandma held me by the ears and lifted me off the feet on the floor until I wiggled like a snake, and she screamed and I let go. People who blame Grandma for my behavior are unfair to think that she was really the crazy one and I was innocent. It was more like we were whacked out partners. We zipped around the house and slapped at each other like one of those world wrestling tag teams. I'd be the Hulk and she'd be Dr. Doom. And when the phone rang, we run at it screaming and yelling and slam into each other. And by the time one of us got the upper hand, the person on the other end had freaked up and hung up. And nothing in the house was ever finished or cleaned up right. A jigsaw puzzle of ancient Egypt outlined the dining room table over the dining room table with extra pieces piled up like pyramids spilling all over onto the floor. I had stacks of homework I had forgotten and drawings of my grandmother's face on big locust bug bodies all taped to the floor as if she'd been squashed by a truck. I stuck wet leaves over the windows, glued my stuffed animals to chairs, hid all of the oven knobs in the dead plant pots, and made a huge string spider webs between the doorknobs and the ceiling lights and the floor vents. And every now and then, I'd catch Grandma in a web, and she'd get tangled out. "Help me! Help me!" she'd squeak like the fly with a human face in that crazy bug movie. Sometimes she could be funny, but not often. Most times she'd just get mad and keep after me nonstop, complaining about everything I did. Don't touch, don't wiggle, don't run, don't yell, she barked out. No matter what I touched or said or did, I felt like I was living in cartoon hell, standing on hot coals with red devils poking me in the bottom with pitchforks as I jumped from one fireplace to another. Even the words I spoke scalded my tongue. And if by accident I'd sit still for 1 minute just vibrate, she'd complain anyway. She could yell at me and knit at the same time. She'd get those needles going as if she was fighting the Three Musketeers all at once. And before long, she'd have a strip of wool that could reach around our block of row of houses and be tied in a bow. But it never amounted to anything. Everything started becoming nothing finished. And all of her projects and all of my homework and hobbies just ended up in piles collected dirt. Even now, my bedroom still has walls painted in placid pink. What she had got going on the bottom, but didn't finish the top. Someone told her that the color pink would help calm me down, but it didn't work. Until Mom returned, my bed was pushed over to the corner along with a chair and splintered word dresser drawers with a peeled off fake wood grain. All old newspapers were spread over the sheets to keep the paint off, but I've been using them as a blanket. Sometimes I think if Grandma had finished painting that pink on everything, I might have calmed down. I used to sit in my closet and pry open the paint can and stare into that shiny pink circle, and I was mesmerized for hours. Or maybe just minutes. I never could tell. But if you believe a color gave off the feeling, then I think it true that pink gives off lots of calm. Maybe that pink just wasn't pink enough because before long, I turned into my wired self again. After Mom came back this past summer and started to organize things, Grandma got worse. She got meaner. I think it was because she didn't like all the rules either. I had to stay with her when Mom was at work, and she began to scare me. About a month before school started, she was mean all morning as usual, and the afternoon, instead of settling down to knit, she kept getting meaner and meaner. Finally, she got so mad at me for bouncing around, she threw everything out of the refrigerator, yanked out the shelves, and flung them across the floor. Now, get inside and stay inside, she said with a ketchup bottle still spinning around her feet like a bowling pin. That slowed me down. I looked at her, and her dentures were pulled over to one side, snapping like she couldn't control them, like they could climb up the side of her face and bite her own ear off. In, she shouted. Get in before I blow a fuse. A hot, steamy sound came out with each word. Don't make me, I said, hopping from one foot. Don't. In, she said. Her body snapped like a whip. I said, get in, or I'll tell your mom you won't listen to my rules. But I wouldn't get in. I knew there were good rules and bad rules. And having time out inside a refrigerator was a bad rule. Lousy, no-good kid, she said, slamming the door. I need a break. She turned and marched outside to smoke a cigarette while sitting on the porch rocker. In a minute, I heard her go after someone for throwing trash in our yard, and then she stomped off. When my mom came home that night from work, I was alone and scared. She saw the kitchen a mess, and I told her what had happened. No wonder you're a nervous wreck, Mom said. And she was angry. We went looking for Grandma and found one scuffed up shoe by the corner sewer gate, and that was all. After Mom thought about it, she said, Grandma probably got so wild she slipped right down to the sewer and was washed away for good. We never did call the police, and for a couple days I kept bending down over the iron grate, cusping my hands and shouting in the dark hole, Grandma! Grandma, come back! I forgive you! Come back! She never answered, and I was sorry because I was the same as her at times when I lost it. Grandma isn't exactly like you, Mama said to me when I told her I was sad. The difference is she's more active in the mouth, and you're more active in the feet. Grandma was always saying wrong, hurtful things about half the day. Then she spent the other half day apologizing. She has a hyperactive mouth, my mother said. You know how sometimes you can't stop moving your feet or swinging the doors or jumping on the bed? Yeah, I said, hanging my head and scratching at the dry patch on my scalp that had already rubbed bald and was a little bit bloody. Mom pulled my hand away and held it up between hers. Well, your Grandma can't help but say things like, "You don't know what you're doing. You ruined everything. You never listened to me. I always said you was dumb as dirt." Mom was right. Grandma would just get so excited about being mean that she would just lead, that one thing would lead to another and another. And before long, she didn't know what she was saying, but her lips were flapping a mile a minute. Then when she finally settled down, she'd feel bad. I'm so sorry," she began. I never knew anything I said upset you. You all shouldn't listen to me. You know I'm just a nasty, trash-talking old fool." She'd say the same thing over and over again. She should have been out on her meds too. Big-time grandma-sized meds. But because she was a grandma, people didn't think she was sick. They just called her a batty old bird. But she was sick like me, only old. So her sickness was different. Now that's all changed since Mama come back, and I couldn't live without her because she's really the one who understands how I am and where I get to work and the wild spell. Like yesterday before school when I was playing stuntman in the early morning, I was diving from the top of the stepladder Mama had left up to change the burnout ceiling lights. I belly flopped on the couch, then bounced onto the floor. She woke up and in seconds pinned me down and pressed her face to mine and said, "So what's up, Doc? You gonna be even or odd today?" "Can I get back to you on that?" I said, trying to squirm away. Then suddenly she held up both fists in front of me. "Pick one," she said. I did, and my pill was in her. It was in her hand. It was always in her hand, like she was some kind of magic Pez meds dispenser. "See," she said calmly and stroked my head. "You know how to choose what's good for you. So, are you going to put the ladder away?" "Yeah," I said, laughing, and I got to my feet. I swallowed my pill without water, and I could feel it roll and then stumble and then roll a little bit more and then stumble all the way down my throat and vanish into my belly. Then I picked up the ladder and I darted across the room, but my aim was off and I slammed to the door jab. That jarred me. Then I tried it again until I was nearly had all the paint chipped off and dented the woodwork. And she just let me keep on trying until finally I got the ladder and the opening lined up just right. And I stumbled through into the plowed into the kitchen table and knocked the plastic rooster and salt pepper shakers on the floor. "Even when you were a baby, you had a hard time getting a square peg into a square hole," she called out to me. "Remember rule number 1. Slow down and think about what you're doing." Mom is big on rules for me.